The night my son got his promotion, I wore the same blazer I'd worn to his college graduation 11 years ago. It still fit. A little snug at the shoulders, maybe, but it fit. I was proud of that. I pressed it myself that afternoon, took my time with the collar, made sure the lapels laid flat. I wanted to look right. I wanted to look like I belonged there. I didn't know that was going to become the problem. My name is not important to this story. What matters is that I am 63 years old. I spent 31 years as an electrician. I have 2 bad knees and 1 good son. And on the night his wife decided I was an embarrassment to her family, I happened to be carrying a folder of documents in my jacket pocket that would change everything she thought she knew about her own life. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where things actually started. My wife Joanna passed from pancreatic cancer 8 years ago, 61 days from diagnosis to funeral. That's how fast it went. We were married 34 years, and I still reach for her side of the bed some mornings. She was the kind of woman who remembered every teacher's name our son ever had, every birthday of every neighbor on our street, every anniversary of every friend who had ever mattered to her. She kept it all in her head, like a library. When she died, I felt like someone had burned that library down and taken all the records with it. Our son, I'll call him my son, because that's all he is to me, all he's ever needed to be, was 26 when she passed. He held it together at the funeral better than I did. He gave the eulogy. He thanked the hospice nurses by name. Afterward, at the house, while everyone was eating the casseroles people had brought over, he sat next to me on the back porch steps and said, "Dad, what do we do now?" I said, "We figure it out." That's what we did. He'd been working in logistics at the time, a mid-level coordinator job at a regional freight company. Smart work, steady paycheck, not much ceiling. He'd talked occasionally about going back to school, getting an MBA, but nothing serious. After Joanna died, something shifted in him. He got serious. He started researching programs, emailing admissions offices, staying up late on weeknights, studying for entrance exams at the kitchen table. I'd come downstairs at midnight for a glass of water and find him there with his notes spread out and a cold cup of coffee beside him. He got into a solid business program, not Harvard, not Wharton, but a respected school with a good placement rate in the industry he was targeting. The tuition was significant. He'd saved a reasonable amount, and he had 1 small scholarship already, but there was a gap, a meaningful gap. I didn't tell him what I did. I didn't want it to be a thing between us, the way money can become a thing between fathers and sons. I contacted the financial aid office directly. Joanna had a life insurance policy. Not enormous, but it existed, and after the house was paid off and the final medical bills were settled, there was a remainder I'd never touched. I sat on it for 2 years, honestly not knowing what to do with it. Spending it felt wrong. Saving it felt like just waiting to die. So when my son needed the money, it felt like the clearest possible answer. I set up a private assistance arrangement through the school's financial aid office. Not a scholarship in any formal sense, just a direct contribution allocated to his account, anonymous, processed as institutional aid. The school agreed. I signed the paperwork. My son's statement showed the funds as university support. He never asked where it came from. He assumed the school had found it somewhere. Kids assume that. When you want something badly enough, you don't interrogate good news. He finished the program in 2 years, graduated with distinction, and got recruited into a supply chain management role at a national firm. He worked hard, genuinely hard, the kind of hard that isn't performance, that doesn't stop when no one is watching. Within 3 years, he was a senior manager. Within 5, he was a director. Last spring, they named him vice president of operations for the entire eastern region. The promotion dinner was at a private dining room in a hotel downtown. His company reserved it for the occasion. 40, maybe 45 people. Colleagues, regional directors, a couple of the executives who'd championed his rise. I drove myself, parked in the hotel garage, took the elevator up. I was nervous in the way you get nervous for things that matter. I wanted to represent him well. His wife, I'll call her my daughter-in-law, because that's the role she holds, even now, met me at the entrance to the private room. She was in a dark green dress, hair up, the kind of put-together that takes 2 hours and looks like it took 5 minutes. She air-kissed my cheek and said something about how nice it was that I could make it. Tone perfectly pleasant. Eyes already moving past me to see who else was arriving. I'd known her for 4 years by then. My son had introduced us at a restaurant shortly after they started dating, and my first impression was of someone very contained, very careful. She grew up in a wealthy family. Her father was a corporate attorney. Her mother sat on charitable boards. She'd gone to private school, then a small prestigious college I'd never heard of. She wasn't unkind to me, exactly. More like I was a category she'd never encountered before, and hadn't decided what to do with yet. We didn't become close. She was always polite when I came for holidays. She complimented my cooking exactly once. A green bean casserole I brought to Thanksgiving that I'm pretty sure she didn't eat. She sent birthday cards with gift cards inside them, which is the greeting card equivalent of a firm handshake. Correct, appropriate, distant. My son loved her, I could see that, and she seemed to love him in her way, which was also contained and careful. I told myself families came in all configurations. I told myself it didn't matter if she warmed to me, as long as they were happy. I found my seat. They'd put me at the end of a long table near the wall, which I noted but didn't take personally. Open bar, so I got a club soda with lime. I'm not much of a drinker. My son came over and hugged me properly, both arms, the way he's hugged me since he was about 8 years old, and told me he was glad I was there. He meant it. I could tell. For the first hour, everything was fine. Nice food, good conversation with the couple seated next to me. An older man from my son's department, and his wife who turned out to be a retired schoolteacher from a town near where I'd grown up. We talked about old hardware stores and whether the winters were getting shorter or if we were just getting older. Normal dinner party things. The trouble started during dessert. My daughter-in-law's father was there. I'll call him my son-in-law's father for clarity, though we'd met only twice before, briefly. He was the kind of man who settled into a room like he owned it, which maybe he did in some metaphorical sense. Silver hair, good posture, the automatic authority of someone accustomed to being listened to. He came over to my end of the table during the dessert course, not to talk to me exactly, but as part of a general circuit of the room, the way important people work a room to confirm their own importance. He glanced at me, nodded, and kept moving. Then he stopped, looked back. "I'm sorry," he said pleasantly enough. "I don't think we've been properly introduced. You're a friend of the firm?" "I'm his father," I said. He looked at me for a moment, then at my blazer, then back at my face. "Ah," he said. That one syllable. I've replayed it 100 times since. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was just recognition. The kind of recognition that says, I see what category you're in and I've already decided where that is relative to me. He moved on. I finished my dessert. Then my daughter-in-law came to my end of the table. Her face was pleasant in the way that faces are pleasant when they are working to stay that way. She crouched down slightly so she wasn't talking down to me, which I recognized as the body language of someone who has thought about optics. "I wanted to check in," she said quietly. "How are you enjoying the evening?" "Very much," I said. "You've done a beautiful job putting this together. I wanted to ask you something." She glanced toward where her father had drifted. "My father's going to say a few words shortly, and then some of the senior executives, and I know you were planning to say something. Your son, my son mentioned it might be nice." "Of course." Her smile didn't change. "It's just this crowd, these are very senior people, and the firm's culture is a little... I want it to feel cohesive, consistent, and I thought maybe it would be better if the remarks stayed to people who knew him in a professional context. You understand?" I looked at her. "I'm his father," I said again. "Of course you are." Her voice lowered a notch. "But you have to understand, this is his professional world. These are the people he has to lead now. And I want him to be seen a certain way. I want them to see him as someone who fits here." She said it gently. She might not have even known what she was actually saying. But what she was saying was, you being here makes him fit less. You, the blazer, the club soda, the fact that you drove yourself up from a row house in a suburb and spent 31 years pulling wire through walls, all of that fits less. So please sit here quietly and let the people who belong here speak for him." I nodded. I didn't say anything. She went back to her seat. I sat there through the appetizers to dessert arc of the evening, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not embarrassment. Something more tired than that. Something that reminded me of the year after Joanna died, when I would go places we used to go together and feel invisible in a way that had nothing to do with anyone else. Just the absence of the person who had always made me feel like I was supposed to be somewhere. The remarks portion of the evening started. Her father spoke first, polished, warm, a few jokes that landed well, the kind of toast that made clear he understood exactly how important this moment was. Then 2 executives spoke, both brief and appreciative and comfortable in front of a microphone. Then my daughter-in-law raised a glass and said something lovely about her husband's discipline and his vision and his character. She was good at this, I'll give her that. My son looked out at the table, and I watched him scan the room the way you scan a room when you're looking for someone specific. He found me. I smiled. He smiled back. And then something moved across his face. A small thing and a registration, and he looked at his wife, and she gave the tiniest shake of her head. He looked back at me. He mouthed something. I couldn't read it clearly. I thought it might have been, "I'm sorry." They opened the floor for a few more informal remarks. One of his colleagues told a funny story about a supply chain crisis 2 years ago, which apparently became a case study in how to stay calm when a regional distribution network collapses in January. People laughed. My son laughed. Good laughter, real laughter. I didn't speak. After the dinner formally ended and people were gathering coats and saying their goodbyes, my son found me near the elevator bank. He put his hand on my shoulder. "Dad, it was a great evening," I said. "You should be proud. All of it. All of it is things you did. I want you to know I see that." He looked at me for a long time. "She talked to you. It was fine." It wasn't. His jaw was tight. I didn't know she was going to. "I would have. It was fine," I said again. "Go back in there. Those are your people. Go be with them." He hugged me again, both arms, the way he's always hugged me. I took the elevator down and drove home. I sat in the kitchen for a while with the lights off. Joanna would have known what to say to me. She always knew. She could find the exact right thing in any situation. Not the comforting thing, which is sometimes a lie, but the true thing, which is always better. I sat in the dark and tried to remember what she would have said, and mostly came up with the sound of her voice without the words. I went to bed. 2 days later, I got a phone call from my son. He was calling from outside, I could tell. Wind noise, traffic. His voice was different from the night of the dinner. Quieter. Controlled in a way that meant something was being controlled. "I want to apologize," he said. "For what happened?" "What she said to you. You don't need to." "I do, Dad. She had no right. I've talked to her. She understands she crossed a line." A pause. "She said you were gracious about it. I was fine. You're always fine. That's the problem." His voice broke slightly on the last word, just slightly, just enough that I heard it. "You were always fine when Mom was sick. You were always fine at the funeral. You're always fine. And I think sometimes I let myself believe it because it's easier." I didn't say anything for a moment. "I'm fine because I had to be," I said finally. "That's all. There's no secret to it." He was quiet. "There's something I should tell you," I said. "I've been meaning to tell you for a while. I wasn't sure it needed to be said, but I think it does. Can you come over this weekend?" He came Saturday afternoon. I made coffee and put out the shortbread cookies he'd always liked since childhood, the ones with the fork-pressed tops that Joanna used to make and that I eventually learned to make myself. We sat at the kitchen table. I put the folder in front of him. He looked at it. "What's this?" "Open it." He opened it. The first page was a copy of the wire transfer confirmation from 8 years ago, the initial disbursement to his university's financial aid office. His eyes moved down the page. He turned to the second page. Third. His face, I noticed, went very still. "This is from the school," he said slowly. "Yes. This is my aid package, the institutional support." He looked up at me. "The money that covered my second year and most of your third." He stared at me. "Dad, your mother's life insurance," I said. I didn't know what else to do with it. She'd have wanted it used. She'd have wanted it used for you specifically. I couldn't think of a single better purpose. He was quiet for a long time. He looked back down at the papers. I could see him doing the math. The amounts, the timing, the years. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything. I wanted you to feel like you'd earned it." Which you did. The money just made the space for what you'd already earned. I thought it was. The school said it was. I know what the school says. I asked them to process it that way. He set the papers down on the table. Outside, the neighbor's kid was doing something in the yard involving a hose and a great deal of shouting. Normal Saturday sounds. My son looked at me. "She talked to you like that," he said quietly, "that night, and you were sitting there knowing—" I wasn't sitting there thinking about the money. I was sitting there thinking about you, about the look on your face when they were saying all those things about you. You've built something real. I wanted to be there for it. That's all. His eyes were wet. He pressed his fingers to the bridge of his nose the way he's done since he was a teenager when he didn't want to cry in front of someone. "I need to tell her," he said. "That's your decision. She needs to know." He looked up at me. She needs to understand what she said, who she said it to. I didn't argue. He called her from my kitchen, stepping partway into the hall for privacy, though the house is small, and I could hear the shape of the conversation without the words. It went on for about 12 minutes. At one point his voice went flat and steady in the particular way that meant he was saying something he'd already decided and didn't need to debate. At another point there was silence for almost a full minute. Then more talking, quieter. He came back into the kitchen, sat down. "She's coming over," he said. "She doesn't have to. She wants to." She arrived 40 minutes later. She stood in my kitchen doorway in jeans and a sweater, which I'd never seen her in. Always before it had been something deliberate, something that required effort. She looked younger, a little undone. She was holding her car keys in both hands. She looked at me for a moment, and then at the floor. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Not just for the other night. For I've been thinking about it, and I think for longer than that. I've been treating you like you were something to be managed, and that was wrong. And I'm sorry." I looked at my son. He looked at me. "It means a lot that you're saying it," I told her. She nodded. She still wasn't quite looking at me. "My mother told me something once. I don't know why I'm saying this. She said that the thing about people who are quietly generous is that you never see them coming. She wasn't talking about you specifically. I didn't know about any of this then. But," she stopped, pressed her lips together. "I should have known who you were without needing proof. That landed somewhere I wasn't expecting it to land. We drank coffee, the three of us, at the kitchen table, and I put out more of the shortbread cookies, and it was awkward in the beginning the way honest things sometimes are. And then it became less awkward. She asked me how I'd learned to make the cookies. I told her Joanna's recipe. She asked if I had it written down anywhere. I said I thought I did, somewhere. "I'd like it," she said. "If you want to share it." "Sure," I said. "Yeah, I can do that." My son walked her to her car when she left. I watched them from the kitchen window. They stood by the passenger side talking, and then she leaned her forehead against his shoulder for a moment, and then they drove away together. I stood at the window a little longer than I needed to. I thought about Joanna, about the night, years ago, when we'd sat in this same kitchen, after one of those arguments that aren't really about what they appear to be about. One of those arguments that's really about fear, about exhaustion, about two people trying to keep everything running and sometimes bumping into each other doing it. I'd wanted to give up on the argument, and she'd said, quietly, no. She'd said, "We don't quit in the middle. We find our way to the end." I've tried to live by that. I'm 63. My knees hurt in the morning. I drive a truck that has 190,000 miles on it. I make my late wife's shortbread cookies every couple of months, because the smell of them still makes the kitchen feel full. I gave a not inconsiderable amount of money to my son's education, and never asked for anything in return, and never told him, and I'd make the same choice again, without a second's hesitation. That night, at the promotion dinner, when I was sitting at the end of the table in my old blazer, while the people who belonged looked out at the room, I want to be clear that I never, not once, felt shame. I felt tired. I felt the particular loneliness of being somewhere without the one person who always knew to find you in a crowd and simply stand next to you, so you knew you were seen. But I did not feel shame, because my son looked across that table and found me with his eyes, the way he's been finding me in rooms since he was a little kid, that automatic seeking out that children do, and that, if you're lucky, doesn't stop when they grow up. And when he found me, he smiled. Whatever else was happening in that room, that part was exactly right. I called him the next Sunday and asked if he and his wife wanted to come for dinner. He said yes without pausing to check the calendar. I already knew what I was going to cook.